My name is Archibald. I'm 76, and I live in a house that smells of faded photographs, mint tea, and dust on the pages of books that no one will open anymore. Once this place was buzzing with laughter from children, clinking glasses, dinners with friends, conversations about business, politics, the future. Now it's just a clock. The same 3 strikes every half hour. I've gotten used to them like a ship gets used to the creaking of its deck. It would be scarier without them. Without them, I'd disappear. My house is on the outskirts of town, in the middle of a once prestigious, now run-down neighborhood. The facade is cracked, but I paint the fence every week. Not for anyone else, but for myself. To keep from going wild. To remember that there's still a line between neglect and will. My children are successful. Nice cars, suits, expensive restaurants where everything shines except their eyes. They come twice a year. Birthdays and, for the record, Christmas. They come with fake smiles and strained topics for conversation. Their children, my grandchildren, are embarrassed, scrolling through their phones, nodding without listening. How are you, Dad? It's fine. Okay, it's time for us to go. It's okay, she says. It's my shield. My trap. My grave. In the store, the saleswoman talks to me as if I were a dog. Slowly. Loudly. Indulgently. She doesn't know that I once ran a company that supplied her supermarket with goods before she was born. At the hospital, people look at me through the eyes. Sitting in line, I see the doctor quickly scan my chart without asking any questions. He thinks I don't understand. But I hear. I catch every look, every sigh. Every day I wake up at 6. I make tea, the same one, green with jasmine. I sit in a chair by the window. The plaid is my old ally. The TV remote is only for turning on the image, I don't need the sound. I've already heard everything. I need to watch, observe. There's a notebook on the table. Black, leather. It doesn't list meetings or plans. It contains thoughts, bits of phrases, names, fragments of pain. My map. My sword. People say that old age is silence. But silence has a voice. And this voice speaks to me every evening, when the windows darken and even the TV becomes unnecessary. I feel something inside me moving. Not anger. Anger is instantaneous. It's fire. Slow. Resentment. Tiredness from being invisible. I'm still here. And I don't forgive. They didn't break me, they hid me. But I'll come back. Not for them. For myself. There is a state when memory doesn't just remind, it sharpens. Like a blade. Every memory is like a scalpel that cuts through time and peels away the skin from the present. I remember holding my first deal in my hands, back in the 80s. Thin paper, cheap printing, but it felt like I was holding the world. I built everything from scratch. Not because I dreamed of being rich, because I hated powerlessness. My childhood smelled of an empty plate and the silent anger of my father, who woke up every night, thinking about what to feed us tomorrow. In the 90s, I was a predator. But, with principles. At a time when everyone was grabbing, I calculated. I survived not because I was ruthless. But because I was cold. A strategist. Then, when friends became enemies for the sake of a bottle and $1, I learned to see the core of actions. I knew how to wait. I knew how to listen to the silence between words. And then act. I was betrayed. Oh, and how? The partner I started a business with quietly stole almost half of the turnover. I didn't sue. I left him everything. And 3 years later he went bankrupt, left with debts and a bad reputation. I knew that time is a better executioner than me. In those years, I often came home after midnight. The children were still sleeping. I put money on the shelf in the hallway, not because I had to, but because they had to see, the Father is the one who holds the world together. I wasn't gentle. But I was present. My son never went hungry. My daughter entered a prestigious university when I mortgaged my house to pay for her education. They don't remember that. They see only weakness in me. And I remember every step they took towards growth, because I bought, dug up, and fought for each of those steps. Once I spoke, and they listened to me. I gave my word and people were afraid to break it. I had power, not just legal or financial, but moral. I was invited to board meetings. I resolved conflicts when everyone else feared responsibility. Now it's silence. The phone doesn't ring. Letters no longer arrive. No one asks for advice. My voice, which once stopped arguments and opened doors, has become a whisper that disappears into a pillow. But those skills haven't disappeared. Leadership doesn't require youth. It requires vision. Not with the eyes, but with the heart. And I see how my son has become greedy. As a grandson, empty. They have learned to be beautiful, but not strong. Because power is not status. Power is the ability to remain silent when you want to scream, and to act when everyone has written you off. They have forgotten who I was. But even worse, they don't know who I am now. I am a memory that awakens. Pain is not a blow. It is not a scream. Pain is about little things. When you stand at the door of your own house with a package in your hand, and the key has fallen to the ground. Try bending over. Your knees are no longer the same. Your fingers are like wooden ones. And passers-by walk by. The woman in the red jacket looks away. The guy in the headphones doesn't even slow down. You extend your hand, not to ask, but as a person to a person, but you only see backs. I've learned to be silent. Sometimes, to swallow. But there are moments when even water hurts. "Grandpa, what are you humming there?" asks my grandson when I try to explain how to use the old watch I gave him. "It's a museum exhibit, Cayman," he adds with a smile that cuts harder than a knife. My son doesn't pick up the phone. First it was, "Sorry, meeting," then, "Didn't hear," now it's just silence. Sometimes I call just to hear the answering machine. There's something calming about that, at least something stable. I had to get a routine checkup at the hospital. An electrocardiogram. They made me wait 3 hours. In line with people talking about old farts who get everything for free. Then the doctor looked over my papers and nodded to the nurse, "Take my grandfather away. Let him sit down. He doesn't seem to hear anything anymore." I heard. Everything. Every word. But the worst thing is when you start to doubt, are you really still here? Not in body. In soul. I would come home and sit in silence. Sometimes for hours. I would be silent. Not out of depression, out of anger. Out of resentment. Out of remembering how many times you've held others on your shoulders, and now, no one even needs to raise a hand. But I'm not an old man crying into his pillow. I wrote down the name of the saleswoman who was rude. The date my son didn't come, even though he promised. A phrase the doctor said. The name of the company my grandson heads. Information is power. My notebook is not a diary. It's a weapon. Every humiliating moment is like a drop of water falling on a stone. Slowly. But continuously. And in the end, the stone cracks. I'm not a stone. I'm a dam. And the water is already rising behind it. I'm not angry. I remember. And memory is more terrible than rage. I was leaving the store. The packages were heavy, 2 loaves of bread, a can of coffee, a few apples. I held them carefully, because my fingers were no longer obeying. When I went outside, the wind picked up. Autumn, prickly, with the smell of rotten leaves and wet concrete. I couldn't handle it, I tripped on the curb and fell. Everything flew, the apples rolled along the road, the can clattered against the asphalt, the loaf fell into a puddle. And I lay there. I didn't cry. I didn't call out. I just looked up, at the gray sky, where even the clouds seemed indifferent. Look, the grandfather collapsed, someone laughed. But he probably won't get up again, another voice, with a note of contempt. Nobody needs him, quietly but clearly. Nobody needs him. That was the last thing. Period. Not in humiliation, in the peace after him. I got up by myself. Slowly, carefully. I picked up the packages, wiped my hands on my jacket. And left. Without turning around. Not thinking about the bruises. At home, I sat down in the dark. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't turn on the TV. That voice was still ringing in my ears, no one needs me. But something clicked. A shadow has always lived inside me. I'm not angry, I'm punctual. And she's my other half. I've been holding her back for years. But now, her time has come. I opened the safe. The key was always with me, on a chain under my shirt, even in the shower. There lay an old, push-button phone, without cameras, without programs, but with contacts that have long since disappeared from the network. There lay a notebook, not the everyday one, but an old one, in a hard cover, where there were notes from 2005. Facts. Names. Services. Debts. Obligations. I blew the dust off. And I felt the feeling of power returning. Not in money. In knowledge. I called the first one, he didn't immediately recognize my voice. Archibald. I thought you, no, I didn't die. I just kept quiet. Then the next one. And more. And more. Once I controlled people like chess. Pieces. Movement. Predictions. Combinations. My children don't know that there's a piece of me in each of their stories. And how easy it is to destroy a system if you know where its weakness is. I won't shout. I won't come to them with a reproach. I'll just start moving the pieces. Unnoticeably. Without noise. And they won't even know it's me. But each of them will feel it. And each of them will see themselves as I see them. Without embellishment. Without illusions. The truth cannot be stopped. Because I'm no longer a grandfather. I'm Archibald. And I'm back. I no longer went outside like I used to. Not to carry packages or catch sympathetic glances. Now my walks are in a different space. In the digital. In the shadows. I opened an old laptop that had been lying in a closet for over a decade. It hummed slowly, but it started up. There, behind layers of archives, everything I needed was stored: diagrams, corporate connections, old correspondence, internal documents that no one had ever deleted, because they forgot. But I didn't forget. My son was the first. Successful manager, sustainability expert, public speaker. Everything was fine, on the outside. But I knew, once, in 2011, I forced my partner to cover up his serious budget scam. At that time, I kept the documents, not out of suspicion, but out of caution. Today I sent them. Anonymously. To a journalist with whom I had once helped his family avoid ruin. Now he is influential. And he knows how to value debts. The material was published in 2 days. Scandal. Internal investigation. Temporary removal. My son's phone was silent. But I imagined him holding the receiver in his hand, not knowing who to call. I knew, he would remember me. But he wouldn't dare to dial. Next, my grandson. Bold, handsome, all about TikToks and startups. He humiliated me because he thought I was prehistoric. He didn't know that I was still studying with people who stood at the origins of the banking system. Everything he boasted about was built on a fragile pyramid of names and fake licenses. One call, and the platform, which never had a license to process financial data, came under the scrutiny of the inspection. A week later, a public scandal. He was removed from the covers. The interview was cancelled. The money was frozen. I didn't sign up. I didn't shine. But everyone who had once laughed now stared into the darkness with fear. All my old connections, like figures from the past, came to life. Some out of gratitude, some out of debt. Some out of simple fear, because they remembered that I never leave open issues. I acted quietly. The attacks were targeted. Through leaks. Through broken deals. Through unsuccessful voting at the council. Through the sudden appearance of compromising material. All without a trace. All by the hands of others. I was just adjusting the wind. Now the doorbell rings again in the house. But I don't answer. The phone is ringing with messages, but I just turn off the sound. Their panic is my peace. From a forgotten room, I have become the center of their anxiety. They can't see me, but they can feel me. Because silence is my weapon. And loneliness is my advantage. They are used to a visible enemy. I have become the one who is not visible, but who changes the course of the game. And this game is mine. I didn't expect thanks. I didn't expect apologies. And even more so, I didn't expect remorse. Silence remained my ally. But now it had changed. If before it had sounded like emptiness, now it sounded like control. In this silence, I heard the world that had despised me learn to pronounce my name again. Out loud. With respect. And sometimes with fear. They began to arrive. One by one. My son appeared first. In a suit, with the face of a man who no longer had the answer to any questions. He sat down silently. His eyes were not brave, not rebellious. The eyes of a boy who had understood for the first time that his father was more than just a shadow in the hallway. I wanted to talk, he said. I didn't answer anything. I just stared. Straight at him. Without judgment. Without warmth. And this silence made him lower his eyes. Then his daughter. For the first time, without pathos, without, "How are you, Dad," with a mechanical intonation. Just hugged. Like I used to, in childhood. I didn't hug back. But I didn't push away either. And, finally, my grandchildren. For the first time, without phones in my hands. For the first time, looking into my eyes, not past them. One of them looked at my old watch, which I had worn all my life, and asked, "Grandpa, why have you always been silent?" I didn't answer. Because the answer is not in words. In that silence, they understood for the first time who I was. And who I had become. Not because of anger. Not because of threats. But because of the deep, uncompromising truth that I revealed to them, like a mirror that is scary to look into. My revenge was not a punishment. It was a consequence. An echo. They thought that old age was weakness. But old age is a complete look. It is an understanding of the entire spectrum of human actions. Old age is a silence that knows everything. That evening I sat down at the table. I opened my notebook. And made the last entry. I didn't forgive. But I didn't hate either. I simply reminded them of who I was. And who I could still be. Because old age is not the end. This is a stage. The sharpest. The clearest. The stage of power that is feared. Because it sees everything. I closed the notebook. I put down my pen. And for the first time in a long time, I smiled.